Okay, it looks like we're live. My name's Kevin Collier. I'm a long-time Seahawks fan. This is my first Seahawks podcast. This is Seahawks Magic, and today we're going to talk about the secret reason why the Seahawks will dominate the 2025 draft. It's a secret, y'all, so don't tell anybody. Let me pull this up. Let me see. This should be cool. Boom, there we go. Okay. We're rolling. We are rocking and we are rolling. So let's just look here, right here, okay? The secret reason why the Seattle Seahawks are going to dominate the 2025 draft, I'm going to just tell you straight up. It's not going to make sense at first, but by the time we're done with this live stream, it's going to make perfect sense. And the reason why is because we hired last year in the 2024 season the genius, cutthroat, GM wizard, John M.F. Schneider. He is a wizard. Hired 7 coaches with 0 NFL experience. Right here. Grubb. He's all the way here on the left. He's got 0 years NFL experience. This is Jay Harbaugh. He's got 0 years experience, and so forth and so on. And this is going to lead to a major draft haul in 2025. That's my surmise. That's my hypothesis. I may be wrong, but I'm not going to be wrong. I'm going to be proven right on this. I would be shocked if this is not an amazing draft for the Seattle Seahawks this year. We might pull out 5 starters. We might get an all-pro or 2. We're going to get some Pro Bowlers. This is going to be a great draft. So basically what I want to do, let me get rid of this. Okay? So basically what I want to do is make sense of why John Schneider hired 7 NFL coaches onto his staff that had 0 years of NFL experience combined. And let's keep in mind here, usually an NFL coaching staff is only going to have, 30 coaches at most. And you have 7? You have 7 with no NFL experience? So let's talk about it, right? Let's go back to last year. Pete Carroll, he wasn't fired, right? He wasn't fired. He was, transferred. He was moved. As a matter of fact, he was promoted to full-time front office. Pete Carroll got a promotion into the front office full-time, and he chose not to take that position for obvious reasons. But we got rid of Pete Carroll, and I'm a Pete Carroll fanboy, if you want to say that, right? I love me some Pete Carroll. He won us a Super Bowl. He had winning year after year after year. Yeah, we passed on the goal line. That hurt. That really hurt. But I still love some Pete Carroll. Then we go on and we hire Coach McDonald. Now, McDonald, I was questionable on him. Not so much now, but coming in, he didn't have a great resume. I love that he was the Ravens defensive coordinator. It was even better that they had the #1 defense in the NFL. I like that he came from Michigan. It's great. It's phenomenal that he's under the Harbaugh coaching tree, and he was able to coach with both Harbaughs, both John and Jim Harbaugh, right? That's the one who we always run over. Seahawks always used to beat the ish out of Jim Harbaugh, but Jay Harbaugh, not so much. So then what did we go on to do? Who did we hire after that? Oh, that's right. McDonald and Schneider flew down to Alabama, and who they hire? Ryan Grubb. They hired Ryan Grubb. Ryan Grubb was the offensive coordinator at UW. You already know who he is. Pretend like you've never heard this before. I know you know this already. Of course, we hired Ryan Grubb at OC as our offensive coordinator. 0 years NFL experience. Then we went on to go get Jay Harbaugh, right? And not necessarily in that order, but he was our special teams coordinator, right? So then we get him. We got Scott Huff. He was the assistant offensive line coach from UW. He used to work with Ryan Grubb. So he's our offensive line coach. And I thought this was entirely problematic. I didn't like this hire at all. from the aspect that we had the worst offensive line in the NFL, and we decided to hire an offensive line coach with 0 years NFL experience. That just seemed to be disaster in the waiting, and that's what it seems like happened. So then we also bring in Zach Hill. He was the quality control assistant. He was out of Arizona State, right? How much NFL experience did he have? None. Then we went on to hire Tyson Prince. Let me pull this back up just so you can really, I think it says something, right? And I think this is Tyson Prince right here. No, I'm pretty sure that's him. So Tyson Prince was the wide receiver coach. Now imagine this, why DK was so frustrated. Your offensive coordinator has no NFL experience. And Geno Smith. So your offensive coordinator, no NFL experience. Your offensive line coach, no NFL experience. You already have like a incredibly shaky offensive line coming into the season, but that's a different story. And then you hire your assistant wide receivers coach. He has no NFL experience. Now, a lot of these guys, they came in because they understood Grubb's offense and he could help them out, but that's not the only reason. So then, that was an accident. So then what did we do? We went on and we hired Jay Harbaugh, the special teams coordinator, who spent 8 years at Michigan. But guess what? He had no NFL experience. We hired a offensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator with no NFL experience. I don't think, as Seahawks fans, we talked about that nearly enough on what a crazy gamble that is. That's absurd, right? Then we got a defensive intern out of Tennessee. His name's Rob Caprice. He's one of the guys up here. Now, this is my first podcast. I'm not used to using this software, and so if I'm a little rough around the edges, please forgive me. I'll get better over time. So we have these coaches up here, right? No NFL experience. We bring in an intern. Interns don't have NFL experience, but still, it's just like another guy on the staff. And then Chris Partridge, our outside linebacker coach out of Michigan. He coached with Harbaugh and McDonald, but he had no NFL experience. So that's 7 coaches. 7 coaches. Can somebody please explain to me why we hired 7 coaches with no NFL experience? And even more so, I want to know, that's one thing, but the fans, the podcasters, the national pundits that talk about this professionally, they barely even made a whisper about this. But me, I looked at that and I said, that's crazy. That's crazy. Just alone to hire 2 of your 3 offensive coordinators. 2 of your 3 coordinators have no NFL experience, and you're walking into the season feeling comfortable with that? I was highly suspect of going into the season last year with 2 out of 3 coordinators with no NFL experience. I thought it was outrageous, ludicrous, absurd. And then you add to that, your offensive line was one of the weakest in the league, and then you hire an offensive line coach with no NFL experience? My head was spinning. I go, this is a horrible decision. What are we doing? Now, it didn't really work in a lot of ways. Let's be real. Ryan Grubb wasn't very good. It was okay. I thought they could have brought him back, and, he's going to have growing pains, and he'd get better over the years. And I thought part of the reason DK and Geno wanted out, I wasn't shocked at all by them demanding a trade because, how many years in a row can you have this coaching circus, this coaching carousel with all these coaches, and the players get fed up? And Grubb was having all types of issues and getting screamed at, and Geno and DK were flipping their lids. They were losing it, and that wasn't great. I wasn't happy with that, but I definitely understood the frustration because I was frustrated too out of some of the stuff he was pulling. And then we bring in Jay Harbaugh, right, as our special teams coordinator. it didn't work with him either for most of the year, right? All these fumbles on the kickoffs and the punts. And we're like, why are these guys still in the game? Why are they still on the roster? I couldn't believe we waited so long to cut these guys off the roster from special teams when our returners kept fumbling the ball. And to me, it looked like Jay Harbaugh deserved to be fired along with cutting those players for him deciding to allow them to keep returning the ball. I didn't like that at all. It spoke to a lack of confidence, a lack of confidence in your ability to make great decisions. It showed stupidity to keep rolling these guys out here. They weren't very good. And it just seemed like the inexperience was showing itself on special teams when it came to these returns. Now, I can't say outside of that, our special teams was actually pretty good. We had a very solid special teams. So outside of the fumbles, I thought Jay Harbaugh did a really good job. And his last name's Harbaugh. That means something. He's connected to a really almost football royalty, a true NFL family. And so there's probably a good reason to keep him on the roster and to keep him as our special teams coordinator. And he's going to have our head coaches back, and him being a young coach himself, he's going to need some guys that he can trust on the roster, so on the coaching staff. So I'm actually glad he's coming back in some ways, but I definitely thought Harbaugh deserved to be fired last year. So ultimately, I look at this and I go, it's crazy for Jim Harbaugh to hire all these NFL coaches with no experience. It's crazy. But guess what? John Schneider isn't crazy. He's not crazy. John didn't say, you know what? I don't care about NFL coaching experience. He didn't say, coaching experience, schmoaching and schmerience. He never said that. He never said it doesn't matter what level of coaching you're at. In college, NFL, it's all the same. John Schneider didn't say that because that's stupid. And John Schneider isn't stupid. John Schneider is a wizard. He's a masterful GM. He's not the best, but over the last, 12 years, he could be the best in the NFL. He's most certainly one of the best. And with all this roster churn and coaching turnover, he's starting a new era for himself. And I believe in John Schneider. And I believe that John Schneider, the wizard, has a master plan. So you have to ask yourself, hey, John, why'd you hire all these coaches with no experience? Talk to me, bro. What happened? I know why. John hired those coaches because those coaches have what John needed most. Those coaches. Let me pull them up again. All these he had zero NFL experience. He had 0 years NFL experience. He never coached or played in the NFL. He never coached or played in the NFL, and he never coached or played in the NFL. Same with this guy. Why all these coaches with no experience? Because they have what's most important. Because these coaches, they've surveyed the high school landscape. They were entrenched in college football, and for years. And what John is doing is he's reproducing what he had with Pete Carroll. And that's plucking gems out of the draft. He's plucking gems out of the draft. He's reproducing the process. Because when Pete Carroll was hired by the Seahawks and him and John were working together, Pete was right out of college, right out of USC. He was used to recruiting players out of high school and then bringing them into USC. So a lot of these players, Doug Baldwin, Richard Sherman, Marshawn Lynch, they didn't play for his team, but he recruited those guys. He watched them play. He was in their homes. He knew what they were about. He understand what they were made of, and he kept an eye out on them. So when he was in the NFL, he wanted those players on his team. So what he's doing with these coaches now, right? What he's doing with these coaches now, and this is genius, he's hiring all these inexperienced coaches and still pulling off a winning record, mind you. That's excellent. That was excellent for him to be able to do that. He had a winning record after getting rid of a Hall of Fame coach, after getting rid of Russell Wilson, all these inexperienced coaches. We still got a winning record and a horrible offensive line. And the reason he's got these guys on these teams because he's going to vet these guys. He's going to vet all these coaches that we've been recruiting out of high school, and he's going to go, who do we need to get that were on your team, and especially the players that weren't on your team that you know are the type of players that can help us win, but other coaches in the NFL don't know those players like you do, so they don't understand what they can do for our football team. You see, he's reproducing the process. He just doesn't go out there and go, oh, I got my little scouts and we're going to, I trust them and we're just going to get these players. My scouts know what's going on. It's like, no, we're going to use our scouts like we always use our scouts, but we've got even more scouts. Now our coaches can be better scouts than some of these scouts that have been on the roster on this coaching staff for years now, because they have a different relationship with these players because they've been following them since high school and not just college. And what I think is that if John can get 4 or 5 starters out of this draft, and I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to get a couple Pro Bowlers. He might get an All-Pro or 2. I think John's going to get an A+ grade this draft. I mean that. That's what I think is going to happen because he's done it before. He's just reproducing the process, right? It's like sometimes, you got to have game. You got to have game. No, game is a part of your process, right? But the process is the process. It's everything combined to help you get what you want. And now this is what John Schneider is reproducing right here. Let me bring in some inexperienced coaches right out of college, and I'm going to pick their brains, and I'm going to figure out what players that are available in this draft that other NFL coaches and scouts are going to overlook. Just like Doug Baldwin, just like Richard Sherman, guys like Marshawn Lynch he was understood. He wasn't understood in the NFL. That's why he was having so many problems with Buffalo, but did real well in Seattle because Pete Carroll knew who he was and knew what he needed and understood his mentality. And that's really what the draft is all about. You can watch tape. It's great to watch tape. Tape's going to tell you a whole lot. Tape's going to tell you probably most of what you need to know, but it doesn't tell you everything. See, if you talk to the coaches, their high school coaches, you sit in their home, you talk to their parents, you talk to them while these kids are in high school, you start to understand what their psychological makeup is all about. So then you go, oh, no. Let's see, that was like Pete with Lynch. He goes, no, Lynch is hard-nosed. He comes from this rough background. He's kind of, dang, there seems like he's on the spectrum a little bit, and you got to give him space. Let him be him. But he's going to show up. He's going to be a great teammate. He's going to bring brutality. He's going to bring focus. He's going to bring a winning mentality, a championship mentality to your roster. And you need a running back like that on your team. But see, Pete Carroll understood who he was because he had a history with him like that. And so John Schneider is trying to reproduce that process with these new coaches. I think you understand that now. I think that's clear. So what I'm looking at here, so during the draft, what may happen? We might have an uptick in players that we draft and maybe that we sign as undrafted rookies. And maybe it's an uptick and a higher propensity than usual of guys out of the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big Sky, because that's where these coaches are coming from. So keep an eye out on that. Keep an eye out on that. Because if we can get 5 starters out of this draft, and then even better if 1 or 2 may be an all-pro, yo, man, we're loaded. We're coming into the season, boom, 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 right? Fully loaded. And so I do understand right now, and I'm going to do a different show on this, and I understand because I'm like this too. What's going on with our O-line, though? What's going on with our O-line, right? It's highly questionable what John's doing, and the pitchforks are out, and we're going to talk about that on Saturday. But today I just want to talk about why we're in a great position to pull gems out of the draft. Because if he can rely on the scouts, relying on those coaches that most of them got fired, by the way, they're not here. and they can help them bring in new talent, and we're going to have a serious draft. So that's it for today. That is it for the day. I hope you enjoyed this. This is podcast number 1. This is Seahawks Magic, and I'm out of here. Later.